He's a seasoned sales and marketing manager who strives to give back to causes like environmental sustainability and has a strong passion for collaborating on content strategy with entrepreneurs or marketers. I'm delighted to welcome Scott Berty of TrueFan on Small Talk. Scott Berty, head of sales of TrueFan. Welcome to Small Talk.
Thanks for having me, Jav. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Scott, I am excited for this conversation because we haven't had this type of conversation where we're going to be talking about two things that I love for you to elaborate on, and that is objectives and collaboration. I hear a lot about collaboration. I'm not hearing as much around your thought around objectives, so I'm interested in that and sharing that with our audience, but I'm also interested in that whole collaboration thought process that you have. So Scott, love for you to share those two things with our audience today.
Yeah, thanks, Jav. I mean, the objective side of it really comes from the marketing side of me, I think. That kind of comes in line to not only your collaboration, with people that you're meeting maybe on or offline, but as well as just those that, you could be creating with, I think, and so as it falls in line to your content creation and those that you can be collaborating with, you really want to go in with a strong objective in mind, sort of reverse engineering the process, especially with regards to your content and how that might be able to help you achieve, your end goal. So whether that be meeting somebody, whether that be career development, finding a certain job, selling, whatever you have in mind for your content creation and kind of what you're going to be sharing out there with the community, I think it's very important to have that objective in mind so that you can consider the steps that you may need to get there.
Now, for the viewer's sake, Scott, you just mentioned one phrase or term, reverse engineering. What does that mean? People are watching and saying, what does he mean by reverse engineering?
Yeah, the classic term, reverse engineering. So, I mean, for us marketers, it's really just having a goal, a defined end purpose. So often starting with that right? To achieve this by this date and this much of it. So being very specific with that and then considering all the steps that you may need to get to that goal. So basically reverse engineering the process that you're going to need to take from start to the finish line for that goal. And I think it really helps when you are keeping in mind content because you can really start to think about the subjects, the thought leadership, the expertise, those different areas that you can add. And then what might come out of that, is in true collaboration, because I think, something that you and I have talked about is not really expecting anything to come from relationships, but just kind of seeing where collaboration can lead to. So your content can be a very good, sort of lead into what they may expect of you for collaborative purposes.
So now let's touch on that whole collaboration conversation, because as you just briefly said, there's no necessarily, and I always say there's no necessarily an agenda in mind. What from your experience, Scott, what for you is true, what I would say true, authentic collaboration from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, Joe, that's building a relationship with somebody, kind of going into a particular conversation or the first time you may meet somebody and really just doing that for the purpose of meeting them and being kind of genuine and authentic with, that introduction and getting to know somebody a little bit and not just, typically selling them because you may have met them through LinkedIn and having that norm kind of professional attitude. And then what that can lead to is, I think people know who you are. So then it becomes that much easier to find little ways that you can either work together because you're already like preemptively thinking about, oh, hey, Jeff brought up the fact that he wants to be running a networking event somewhere near around Aurora. Well, that's kind of interesting because, if there's not necessarily the big enough hub there to have one, maybe we can start discussing that York Region LinkedIn local meetup, that sort of thing. And I think that in my experiences, it's giving me a tremendous amount of experience building those relationships first, but then ending up with collaborative opportunities where I can really get the experience that I may have been looking for and what was previously my objective with content.
Amazing. So you've got folks information around Scott's contact. The whole idea of Small Talk is to start conversations and then continue them. So if you want to continue this conversation, you heard something as you watch Scott on the show and you want to continue that, or you listen to it on the podcast version of the show, you want to continue that conversation, his information is there. Please reach out to him. Scott and TrueFan are just really, really doing amazing stuff. And please be on the lookout for that company, TrueFan. They're going to just, as Gary Vee would say, crush it. And so do look out for that. Now, Scott, one question we ask all of our guests is the following. If you had an opportunity to have a small talk conversation with anyone living or past, who would that be?
Wow, good question. Wasn't prepared for this one, but I'd have to say, just because of the name Small Talk, I would be really curious to see how Elon Musk would fare in an episode that's as small as this. So yeah, having a chat with Elon would always be something that's high on the agenda, I would say. Now,
you said Elon Musk. Why would you like to connect with Elon Musk?
I just find, from having listened to some of the TED Talks, his just different speeches, plenty of them on YouTube, there's such an interesting sort of inner workings to his mind as he speaks that you can almost see through your conversation, or the person's conversation who may be interviewing him. And I find that very, very interesting, especially for like a guy of his caliber, who's around all these sorts of rocket scientists and businessmen and leaders and the respective communities, to kind of have always that constant steady train of thought that he really doesn't sway from too much. Yeah, very interesting guy, and I've always found his answers to questions just phenomenal.
That's amazing, Scott. Thank you again for being on Small Talk. We've got Scott Berty from TrueFan. It's always been a pleasure, and I'm certainly looking forward to continue this conversation and relationship with you. So thank you again for being on Small Talk.
Thanks, Jav. Lots more collaboration in the future.
Thank you to Scott Berty of TrueFan for joining me on Small Talk. You can also listen to the show as part of our podcast series. Now it's your turn. Please comment, subscribe, and share. If you've got a topic you'd like to discuss on the show, please give me a call or send me an email. We'll talk with you next time.